solo presentation about leaking, and now he's going to do like a compact version of it. I hope you guys are going to enjoy it. Are you ready, Mike?
Yeah, I'm ready. I think Matt wants to do it.
I just wanted to say hola, hello. It's good to be here. I want to thank Willie for inviting us. This is Mike. Mike's standing. Mike's going to give a bit of a formal presentation on link building, kind of the hyperlink algorithm and PageRank, so on and so forth. And then Ralph, to your right, your left, is going to basically tell you everything Mike just told you doesn't make any sense, and you can do things other ways. And then hopefully we'll have some questions. So if we are speaking too quickly, is this too fast? Is everyone, it's okay? Perfect.
I haven't understood a word you said, so.
No one does. Mike, take it away.
Good morning, guys, and I'm very pleased that you do speak English. My wife tells me that I speak only two languages fluently, English and rubbish. So might be more of the latter than you get today. I guess probably the best way to start is by asking this question, why are we here? My guess is probably the reason that you guys come to these conferences is to learn a bit more about SEO, to figure out how to get your web pages to the very top at Google, or maybe it's even Bing. I guess that's why we're here, yes? I'm going to take this silence to mean, yes, Mike, that's why we're here. So people are always asking me, Mike, if you know so much about this, couldn't you just help me get my web pages to the top at Google? I've started asking the question back. Started asking, why should you be at number one at Google? Why should you be at number one and not the person behind you? Why should this person over here be at number one and not this guy here? And I can never get an answer to this question. So what I did just before we started this session, I took a little yellow post-it note, a little yellow sticky note, and I wrote the words, why should you be? And then I stuck it on the base of one of the chairs in this room. And I'd like the person who's sitting on that chair to stand up now and tell me and everybody else why you should be at number one. Just check the chairs there, guys.
Ok, observa con vuestras sillas. Parece que hay una silla con un post-it amarillito. Una pregunta de Mike.
Actually, Massimo, I just made that up. It was just a joke.
Ok, it was just a joke. Era broma, venga.
That's the rubbish.
I'd just like to see the look of sheer terror on some of the faces. What are we going to do? What I'd really like to do is to take something which is an extraordinarily complex subject and see if I can simplify it, make it easier to understand. And then hopefully by the end of this session, you'll have a better idea of how search engines really work, how ranking is achieved, why linking is important. It's strange because I wrote my second book on search engine marketing 9 years ago. 9 years ago I wrote the book. And 9 years ago, strangely enough, there was the biggest algorithm change in Google's short history at that time. It was called the Florida update. You guys all look far too young to have been around when Google did the Florida update, but it caused panic in the SEO community. And isn't it strange that 9 years later we have another the Farmer update and it's causing exactly the same kind of problem. Hopefully, if we take a look at the challenges that search engines have, particularly with Google, and you get a grasp of the major challenges that they have and why they have to make these changes, and why we, as search engine optimizers, have to face those challenges, perhaps it'll make a bit more sense to you. When I wrote this book 9 years ago, it took probably 80 pages to explain the bit about how search engines work. And that was the short version. I cut that back from maybe 170 pages to condense it. And strangely enough, the first person to read that section was my friend Ralph Tegmeyer here.
And the only person to read that.
he was having great difficulty sleeping that night. This helped him greatly. At the end of this section on how search engines work, I realized that I could understand quite a lot of this. It was very complex, but trying to explain it was so difficult. So I started asking around at search engines, the search engines that were around at the time, do you have some kind of a graphic, some visual that I could show people to help explain? Anyway, they didn't have one. So I created this. As you can see, I'm no graphic artist, but for many years this has helped people to understand a great deal about the challenges that search engines have, crawling the web, indexing, and then ranking documents. Just to give an indication of truly how long ago it was that I did this, you can see in the top right-hand corner that very advanced and modern piece of equipment. This computer at the top, which is probably a 386. So the two important things to think about and how search engines work. First of all, the way that we look at the web and the way that web pages link together is something different in the way that a search engine does. On the left-hand side of this graphic, you can see that globe on a checked background. That represents a graph. And this is how Google and other search engines plot crawling the web. It is very, very non-trivial. It is a very difficult task to crawl the web, to bring in millions of pages, to keep them fresh, and then to go out and find new pages. In SEO, we've always spent a lot of time looking at this part of the job, at crawlers. I think we spend far too much time looking at that because the most important thing these days is about ranking. So instead of spending all of my time looking at this graph and what was happening with crawling, I wanted to look at this side where that very modern piece of equipment is, that computer. What is it that makes one document rank higher than another? This is the question that I asked as a joke. Why should your document be higher than somebody else's? At this period, most ranking was based on the text on a page. So I want to talk first of all about why the text is important. Then when it became so difficult to rank by text, why Google and other search engines had to start looking at linkage data. So this is actually what happens. It's a very simple graphic that shows what happens when a search engine comes to your website. Basically, the crawler comes in, extracts the text, and puts it into the index. They don't actually download the page and keep every page. Somebody once said to me that Google has the entire web on a hard drive somewhere, and I said, well, that's a crazy thing to do. We have a place for that. It's called the World Wide Web. So, of course, Google does keep a cache copy, but that's going to change every time the index changes. But keep this simple. Google's bringing down millions and millions of pages every day. Each page gets an identifier, .1, .2. We're just looking at 2 pages here, but we're dealing with millions. And basically, the text is stripped out. We know which term on the page came from which document. That's the easy part. The next part is to make life even easier for Google. So they create what's known as an inverted index. What does an inverted index mean? There's a couple of things here. First of all, Google only needs to keep one occurrence of every term. There is no point in Google keeping 10 billion occurrences of the word the, for instance, in the English language, when only one needs to be kept. So the best way to think about the inverted index and what Google is doing with keywords is to think about a good textbook. Think about something like, for instance, a medical textbook. If you were looking for a word at the back of that book in the index, the word is hemoglobin. Why did I choose hemoglobin? I have no idea why that word came to mind. So what happens is you go to the back of the book, you find that word, it says hemoglobin, appears on page 110, 172, 213, and so it goes. What's happening is the word is pointing to the page, yeah? So that makes it a lot more easy for Google to understand what word is on what page. But lots of pages have exactly the same words. Back in the 70s, late 70s, a scientist by the name of Gerard Salton, who is largely known as the father of modern information retrieval, was working on an automatic way of being able to extract text and rank it. Of course, there was no sign of the World Wide Web, even though the internet was around at the time. Basically, he was looking at this for digital libraries, CD-ROMs, as eventually would happen as well. And he developed this theory called the vector space model. Google and all of the search engines at some